welcome to Ride Beyond, where we go beyond the ride and into what matters. In this podcast, you'll find meaningful conversations with people who live with passion, chase freedom, and remind us what it means to live fully. The motorcycle is our connection, but the stories are what take us beyond. The road to hell doesn't begin with fire. It begins with silence and solitude. No pavement, no guardrails, just a narrow dirt road cutting through the Swartberg mountains of South Africa. The sun was getting low and the light was beginning to fade, and this is not the type of road you want to ride at night. We go past a sign that says dangerous road for 48 kilometers, use at own risk. Even had an exclamation point at the end of each sentence. There weren't many signs out here, so the fact that this one was here means it's serious, and we took it seriously because we're in the middle of nowhere, deep in the heart of remote South Africa, and if something goes wrong, you know the consequences are high. You're a long way from help, so we wanted to make it down as quickly as possible, but without taking any unnecessary risks. So we charged ahead and we approached the descent into the valley below, and there's this really tight, steep, narrow, winding road that was very rocky and gravelly and filled with holes and ditches and lots of opportunity to make a mistake and go off the edge if you weren't being careful, especially on these big bikes. But we made it down, and just as it was starting to get dark and, hearts were pounding, and we get down to the bottom of the valley, and it's just miles of deep sand. Our tires sink into the sand and dust fills the air, and we're just riding through this thick fog of dust as the world kind of gets dark, and we're passing through this forest of these dead trees that are just black, and the sky is starting to fade from a bright orange to a dark, deep purple, and through the dust, you can see bats flying around in the trees, in these dark black trees. It felt like we were passing through a haunted forest, and it felt spooky. At the same time, you're in the middle of Africa, and there's leopards, there's baboons, there's creatures lurking in the shadows, watching every move, and I stopped to let the dust settle, and behind me over the mountain, this blood-red moon was rising, and it was a pretty surreal scene with just this red moon and this glowing sky and these black, ominous trees and the dust in the air and the bats flying around. And I think what made it all feel so much more creepy was the history of this valley, and the village that we were riding to had a lot of lore and kind of a scary past.
There are places the world forgets and places it chooses not to remember. The road in doesn't feel welcoming. It whines like it's trying to lose you. And just when you think you've made it, the mountains close in behind you. Down there, it's quiet. Not peaceful, just still, like the air has been sitting too long. People lived here once, families, generations, cut off from everything beyond the valley, left with only each other and the stories they told, stories passed down until no one remembered where they began. Names repeated, faces repeated, lives repeating. And whatever happened here, it didn't leave. It settled into the walls, into the ground, into the silence. There's something about this valley that doesn't feel finished, like it's still holding on to something or waiting for it. Maybe that's why places like this remain. Not because they were meant to be remembered, but because they refuse to be forgotten.
So this road was one way in and one way out. And at the very end, there's a tiny little village called Dehell, which means the hell, which literally means the hell. And Dehell is one of the strangest communities in South Africa. It was originally settled by European refugees in the 1830s. And the original settlers of this valley shut the doors to the outside world for over 100 years. They built this village at the bottom of this treacherous canyon with no road in, no road out, no contact with outside civilization, no cars, no electricity, no phones, no contact. It was almost like they just separated themselves from the rest of the world, and it's this place where time stood still, and it sounds like some pretty creepy things happened in this place. If you choose to believe the folklore around this community from the locals here in South Africa, they say that the people here were said to be found 100 years later, just living off the land, wearing goatskin clothing, brewing these strong alcoholic drinks out of honey, and they were speaking like an outdated dialect of Dutch, almost like developing their own language. They were essentially like preserved in time back in the early 1800s. But I think being isolated for so long, things started to get a little creepy. And when you're in a little village like that, it's said that all the inhabitants started becoming inbred, and they were having these demented children. And in author Andre Brink's novel, it's called The Devil's Valley, published in 1998, he paints a pretty haunting portrait of the valley where the residents were said to be inbred, and the dead were rumored to walk amongst the living, and unwanted children were stoned to death. And you have to think that some of these tales, blur the line between myth and reality, but I'm sure a lot of it's true. And regardless, the lore has really captured the attention of travelers and journalists and writers who have dared to venture into this strange place. But the road to Dehell was just the tip of the iceberg on our travels through remote South Africa. And the road to get here started long before this journey began. I want to give a shout out to a really special partner of mine. I've been working with 805 Beer for close to a decade now. And honestly, it's more than just a beverage company to me. It's a symbol of a lifestyle that I believe in. 805 was born on the central coast of California, the 805, a place where life moves to the rhythm of surf, moto, music, and open roads. And whether you're out riding, jamming with friends, or just soaking in the last light of the day, 805 is right there with you. It's not about hype. It's about living fully and embracing every moment. But what makes 805 truly special is their commitment to sustainability. They've been brewing for generations and relentlessly focused on preserving the land that they call home, conserving water, reducing waste, and protecting what matters, the land where we live and play. They support the raddest events and the sickest athletes. But most importantly, they support the culture. That's why 805 has become a staple in my life. The year before, I was in Costa Rica with my friend Wesley Hannum. Wesley owns a company called Moto Safari, where he takes riders on these incredible global adventures in some of the most amazing places around the world. And generally, you'll spend a week or two on bikes. He plans out an incredible route and then guides us on these amazing adventures. You stay in these really cool places, and then you keep riding. Every day you just ride to a new place, and each day is a new adventure. And it's an amazing way to see a new country and to dive into the culture and just experience a place in a way that would otherwise be unattainable or really difficult to plan. So he's providing these like once in a lifetime experiences, and he's still doing it. So like if you're interested in taking an adventure like this, go check out Moto Safari. They're the best, and Wes is the best, and I promise like you'll love it. But long story short, I was in Costa Rica with Wes. This was the first trip we ever took together, and we were having a blast riding through the jungles of Costa Rica, but there was a few nights where we were sitting around having drinks and eating dinner, and Wes just kept talking about South Africa next year. And he's like, he's been trying to line up this trip for several years now, and he's like, man, you gotta come to South Africa. It'll blow your mind, I promise. Costa Rica is cool, but South Africa will blow your mind. He grew up there, so he knows the country like the back of his hand. He speaks the language, and he's the perfect person to give us the true off the beaten path experience. So the kind of stuff you'd never see as a tourist. So I was in, man. I was convinced and excited for the idea of an adventure. I had never been to the continent of Africa, and this sounded like something that I really wanted to do. So before we even left Costa Rica, I already had Africa in my mind, and it would be the next great adventure. So 9 months later, we were touching down in Cape Town. When we landed at the airport and transported to our hotel for the night, where the bikes were all stored and where we would be taking off the next day, we saw some familiar faces, some of my friends that were there in Costa Rica. And the beauty of these moto safari trips is it seems like a lot of us are like-minded people who choose to take these adventures. And the moto safari crew kind of has become this tight-knit community, and a lot of the same people go on multiple trips. So you see familiar faces from past trips that you've already been on, and it's really cool because you have that friendship with them and that like life experience that bonds you. So seeing them again and going on these rides with them is just like so cool. And then you meet all these new people that are joining you that then will become good friends as well through this adventure. So we took off from Cape Town and left the city, and it's a big city, so it took a while to get out of town and wind through the different roads and canyons, and we started climbing the mountains just outside of Cape Town, and really fun mountain roads. And the riding was enjoyable, but it didn't really feel like much different than the riding that I had in Colorado. And until we got about an hour outside of the city, and suddenly there was just baboons everywhere. There was baboons running across the road, sitting on fence posts, and we're riding through these smaller villages outside of the city, and suddenly it starts to feel like, man, it really set in, like we're not in America anymore. This is like, it's the moment I realized we had stepped into something completely different. So eventually the pavement turned to dirt, And like Wes promised, we would find all the best locations off the beaten path. And we followed these dirt roads for several hours that afternoon until we got to our camp in Cedarberg. I think it was called the Cedarberg Oasis. And it's just this beautiful zone. There's these red rock canyons, and like it's kind of desert, but mountainous and rocky and just really beautiful. So we got to camp and we hung out with the group. We were all kind of just taking in the day and first day on the bikes and hanging out, laughing, telling jokes. And my friend John and I decided to go take a little ride for sunset and shoot some photos. So we got on the bikes and we grabbed our cameras and went up the road a few miles and just explored these canyons and these dirt roads through these canyons. And yeah, we were shooting photos of all the red rock and the beautiful mountains. And I just remember like thinking about like looking on a map and thinking about how far away we were from home. And my home in Colorado at the time, I was thinking like there's almost no further destination from home than where I am now. We're almost on the exact opposite side of the globe, and that's pretty crazy. So I just took a moment to kind of appreciate that and like think about how grateful I was to be in this like beautiful landscape in South Africa, so far from home, with one of my best friends, with a few of my best friends. And just I took a moment to store that mental picture in my head because I was like, this is really special. I'm gonna save this. And I intentionally stopped to like save that moment in my head. I think I'll never forget it. But it's just one of those times where you stop and think about like, man, this is crazy. Like, I never want to forget this. So really grateful to have those kind of moments with my friends, and grateful for the places that motorcycles have taken me. So it was a fun night. So we shot some photos. It started getting dark, so John and I cruised back to camp. And that first night we slept in these little canvas tents. I got unlucky. I got the tent with no bug screen on it, or the zipper was broken, so mine was just wide open. It was really hot, so I was sweating super hot and just had bugs all over me all night. That's all right. It was actually enjoyable, kind of even just laying there and like just listening to the sound of the wilderness. In the morning on day 2, we were pointed toward Oberg Pass. And this was like a big, treacherous mountain pass. And in South Africa, like these roads are really remote and don't necessarily get maintained all the time. And there had been some storms recently, and the locals were telling us that the conditions going over the pass were the worst they'd ever seen. We were riding some big adventure bikes, and they were essentially saying there's no way that you're going to make it up the mountain on those bikes. Like, don't go that way. You won't make it. But in typical fashion, we went anyways and started riding toward Oberg Pass, like through the flat, hot, dry desert, just miles and miles of like wide open spaces. And there was a crazy moment when we came over this hill and dropped down into this flat, long stretch of road, and there was a barbed wire fence on the side, and we saw an ostrich who got stuck in the fence, and he was completely tangled up in the barbed wire, and it was super sad. We all came to a stop, and Wes got out some wire cutters, and we cut the bird free. He was all completely cut up and sliced up from this barbed wire and bleeding everywhere, and he was really scared. So as soon as we cut him free, he sprinted across the road and ran straight into the other barbed wire fence, and then tumbled over the fence and just kept running off into the distance. And hopefully he recovered. But yeah, that was a really sad sight to see, but I'm glad we could hopefully help him. And yeah, it was pretty heavy. So yeah, Wes cut him free, and then we just kept riding. And shortly after that, we reached the bottom of the pass, and the local people weren't lying.
It doesn't take much out here. One mistake, one bad line, 1 second of hesitation, and suddenly you're reminded this isn't a place built for you. There's no control, no guarantees, just movement and the thin line between holding it together and letting go. You forget sometimes that this isn't your world. Out here, you're the outsider, passing through something older, something that doesn't care if you're there at all. And for a moment, you feel it, what it's like to not be at the top of anything. There's a point in every challenge where turning back would make sense, where the risk outweighs the reward, where your body is tired and your mind starts asking questions. But something keeps you moving. Not logic, something deeper. And later you realize that's the part you came for.
The road, there was long sections that were literally just massive rock gardens and boulders and jagged rocks everywhere, and the type of riding you would be doing on like a hard enduro bike, not on a big BMW GS. People were stalling, dropping bikes. It was a battlefield getting up that mountain, but we all helped each other. And you know, if I saw people struggling, I would stop and help them lift the bike or get them going again. Or, you know, with some teamwork, we were all able to make it up to the top. And after a couple hours of blood, sweat, and tears, I think we all reached the top of that mountain, and everybody was sweating and exhausted and out of breath, but happy to be there. And it was kind of like this sense of relief that we actually made it through. And I laid down at the top and kind of caught my breath, because I was exhausted. I was picking up so many people's bikes, helping them get going again, and running up and down the hill, because, you know, I would pick up a bike and then ride it out of this like rock section and then run back down and then get my bike and then ride it through, and vice versa. So it was really a gnarly climb, but getting to the top and just laying on my back and like staring up at the clouds and catching my breath, and then taking in this like vast, massive view of just like probably like the biggest landscapes I've ever seen. Just endless stretches of land that we could see from up on top of these mountains. And that was really cool. So up on that plateau, we continued along a road, and now we were at higher elevation, and the temperatures were not quite as hot, and we were riding toward the town of Sutherland, which is known for its night sky. It's a super remote town. It's, like I said, higher elevation, and there's no cities around, so there's no light pollution. It has really clean air, so there's no air pollution. So at nighttime, it's a world famous dark sky zone, and you can really see the stars unlike anywhere in the world. It's home to the South African Astronomical Observatory, and the Sutherland Observatory is also home to the South African Large Telescope, which is among the world's largest telescopes that's made some remarkable discoveries in astronomy and astrophysics research. So it's really cool. As someone who loves space and looking at the stars, it was cool to ride motorcycles to a place that is all about astronomy and see some really beautiful stars that night. And yeah, so we rode this long dirt road into the observatory, and there was just like springbuck everywhere. They're basically South Africa's version of deer, and there was just herds of them in every direction, like running all around and kicking up dust into the sunset. And it was really cool to see all the wildlife out here in the middle of nowhere. And I remember that ride that evening being really fun. Just a real simple dirt road, but like really enjoyable, really pretty light, lots of animals. It was cool. When we got to the observatory, we had all these different bunks where we were staying, and that night we looked through a telescope. There was someone pointing out, one of their staff who was pointing out some different things for us to look at and teaching us a bit about the stars and some different things that we could see in the sky that night, and that was really fun. And then we had some delicious dinner. It was like this very fancy kind of upscale dinner, which was unexpected out here in the middle of nowhere. But we had a really great dinner and went to bed relatively early that night because I think we were all pretty exhausted from a long day of riding and climbing and dropping bikes and saving that ostrich and just all of it. So we wanted to get a good night's sleep, and we would need it because the following day we would be riding into the depths of hell. Foreign Ryder is my favorite apparel brand, hands down. Founded by my friend Ralph Dunning, a pioneer in the apparel industry with over 30 years of experience, he built this company for people like us, riders, explorers, creators, those who live active lives and need gear that can keep up. When I'm training, I wear the Odyssey collection. It keeps me cool, dry, and performing better for longer. When I'm traveling or just relaxing at home, the Solace collection is my go-to for unmatched comfort. But the real standout for me is the Merino base layers. They keep you warm, dry, and feeling perfect under a wax canvas jacket for those cooler rides. And when it's hot, like it is here in Florida, the Odyssey long sleeve tee keeps me super cool and comfortable all day long. The fit, the feel, the quality of these products is on another level. And that's why I literally wear them every single day. Foreign Ryder isn't just clothing, it's a mindset. A reminder to live with intention, to choose quality over quantity, and the exploration of freedom, whatever freedom means to you. Check out the full collection at foreignrider.com. Once you wear it, there's no going back. Now remember, this observatory in Sutherland is pretty high elevation, so we woke up in the morning and it was freezing cold. It was frosty and we were bundled up for the cold. But thankfully, we got on the road, and as we started riding, as soon as the sun hit, the frost melted pretty quickly, and we started descending into lower and lower altitudes, and it really started warming up. But we got to this paved road, riding down the hill, down through these canyons, just winding, descending through these red rock formations. And there was a moment where I was following John, and we were just fully tucked for speed, winding left, right, just mobbing through these canyons. And all of a sudden, in front of John's wheels, there was a cobra slithering across the road. And as he passed it, it struck at him, and it was biting at his boots. And I quickly swerved around to the other side of the road because I didn't want to get bit by this cobra. But yeah, we just kept riding, and the landscape just kept changing. And one thing that became very apparent about South Africa and just how big and vast is that there is such a dynamic range and variety of landscapes here. There's everything from like beaches and oceans to deserts and mountains and canyons and just this very vast variety of landscapes, and it was just constantly changing. And as we descended down from this very dry, rocky canyon, we got into lower altitudes, and all of a sudden it's turned green, and it was very lush, and it felt like we were riding through Jurassic Park and like these dense forests, and there's just like baboons running wild through the trees. And we spent the better part of that day like riding through this very lush jungle landscape through water crossings, and spent a lot of time just in the trees until eventually the landscape changed again, and we could see these mountains in the distance, these very steep, sharp, rocky, rugged mountains. And Wes was like, that's where we're heading. We're going up those mountains. And as we got closer, like I said, the landscape began to change and shift again. And this time it started feeling more like, felt like we were in Lord of the Rings. It was this real narrow road up these jagged mountains with these medieval stone walls. And I was just waiting for like a dragon to fly over the mountain. It really felt like we were in Scotland or like medieval times. We were, like I said, Lord of the Rings is what it felt like. But yeah, we kept riding up into the mountains, and we reached the top of the pass, and we were kind of up in the mountains, and there was just this long remote road into Dehell, and we had to get there before dark, so we were carrying a pretty good pace, and kept riding, and eventually got down to the bottom of the pass as it started getting dark, and entered into this forest with all the dead trees and the bats and the blood red moon, and a place with all this myth and legend and spooky history that was cut off from the world for over 100 years. There was this interesting balance between like fear and fascination. It's a really ominous feeling, but you're just curious about like what's around the corner. Where are we going? What's it going to be like? And when we arrived just after dark, we were greeted by some of the most friendly smiles on the whole trip. The people who were hosting us in this little farmhouse, they had a delicious meal ready for us. So yeah, we sat there in this little village and surrounded by historic buildings. There was a cemetery. There's like an old water mill along the Gamka River. But the hospitality and all the amenities were literally top notch. Like, they were so nice and so friendly and so hospitable. And we had an amazing hot dinner and a delicious breakfast in the morning. And we had showers and comfortable beds. And, we kind of settled in for the night and sat around the fire and hung out and had some drinks, and it was nice. Just kicked off the boots and hung out with the boys in like this really crazy village that we rode to, and it was honestly like kind of funny with all the lore and all the darkness that surrounds the stories of this place. We really liked it and kind of thought to ourselves like, man, it's hard to think of this place as any type of hell. This place is great. We had a great time, and at the same time, you know that the history of this place is wild and it's creepy, and it's kind of crazy to like look around this village and think what it might have been like during that 100 years of isolation.
It's strange how a place with a name like hell can feel so human. You expect something else, something harsher, something unforgiving. You expect the place to match the story, but it doesn't, not at first. Everything feels normal, comfortable even, like whatever you imagined never really existed at all. And for a moment, you start to question it. The stories, the warnings. Maybe this place was misunderstood, or maybe we just needed something to project onto it. But places don't earn names like this for no reason. And sometimes what you feel on the surface is only what's been allowed to remain. So maybe this place isn't what we imagined. Or maybe we're just seeing the surface.
The next morning, I was woken up early by some roosters, and we had to get up early anyways because we had a long ride to get back out of this canyon. Like I said, it was only one way in and one way out. So we ate some breakfast and geared up, and I think everybody kind of had to mentally prepare for that sandy silt bed ride back out because there was a lot of bikes falling over on the way in, and we still had to get back out the same road we came in on. So we spent that morning climbing back out of the canyon and back out of the mountains, and then we dropped back down out of the mountains on the other side into the Baboon Valley. And it lived up to its name. As soon as we entered the valley, there was monkeys everywhere. John and I stopped and pulled out our phones, and we were like videotaping these baboons and like riding and just pointing at all the monkeys, and it was cool. And that night we ended up in the heart of the Baboon Valley. There's these really cool cave dwellings that you can stay in. They're just like these little places to stay built inside of these caves, like these natural caves in the side of these cliff sides. They built like a wall on the outside and basically made these little homes in the cliffs. And we stayed in the caves that night, and it was kind of creepy. There was like spiders and everything else, but it was a great night. We had a traditional South African braai, which is their word basically for a barbecue, where we just cooked meat over an open fire, and we all just sat around outside of these caves and cooked meat on the fire, and it was so delicious. But yeah, it was really fun. I remember that night was fun. We were all just laughing and hanging out, but yeah, if you ever have a chance to have a South African braai, it's like the best. But yeah, we spent 2 days riding through that valley, and so we got up the next day and we continued, and there was just this long 2-track road through this kind of forested terrain, and there was just monkeys everywhere, and really fun riding. And a highlight of that section for me, I've told this story before on the podcast, but there was this moment in the morning we were riding, and like I had kind of let the group go ahead of me, and I was just, riding kind of on my own, taking in this beautiful landscape, and this white horse just came running out of nowhere down through this field and was kind of running alongside me in the distance, and got closer and closer and was just running with me, and then kind of running behind me and just keeping pace with me. I was riding slow so he could keep up, but it was just this really cool moment where me and this horse were just kind of like traveling together, and It was just a really amazing moment that I'll never forget. I don't know why it was following me, but it was a very special moment.
Some moments don't arrive like the others. They don't build. They don't announce themselves. They just happen. Something shifts. The same road, the same light, the same world, but somehow different. You feel it before you understand it. A kind of awareness, quiet but undeniable, like you've stepped into something that was already there, just waiting for you to notice. There's no reason for it, no explanation, no clear beginning. And for a moment, you don't try to make sense of it. You just stay in it because something in you knows. This isn't something you chase. It's something you're given. And if you start asking questions, it disappears. So you let it pass through you. And just as quickly as it came, it's gone. Everything returns to what it was, but not completely. Because something stays with you. Not something you can point to. Not something you can explain. Just a feeling that for a brief moment, you were exactly where you were meant to be.
After several days of riding through dust and dirt and desert and canyons and sleeping in caves and tents, we were really excited to reach Wes's home in St. Francis Bay, right on the ocean, well, right near the ocean. He had this beautiful home, and we all got to stay there and have like a little party that night and just get showered up and kind of spend a day or two to just reset and hang at the ocean and kind of wash away the miles of desert. And it was nice to just hang with the crew. We checked out this old lighthouse in St. Francis Bay and climbed up to the top, and you got a cool view of the coast, and would continue on to kind of the climax of the trip, the most African thing we could do, and we went on a safari. The safari was epic. Like I said, this was like the real African experience that we were looking forward to. And we got to see all the big five that they say, like lions, elephants, giraffe. I know they had hippos there and they had crocodiles. We didn't see the hippos or crocodiles, but we saw lots and lots of animals. It was really cool. Lots of lions, lots of giraffes, lots of water buffalo, and all these little cool kind of kangaroo looking creatures running around at night. And it was great. So we had 2 days at this safari, and we got to go on a couple game drives in the trucks, and we were all staying in these little stone huts right on the game preserve. And it was wild. Like John and I got to our hut, and the the guy working there, he was like, "All right, well, check under your beds, make sure there's no cobras or anything under there," which was crazy to think that you have to look for cobras in your room. And it was cool at night, like laying in this little tiny little stone hut, and you could just hear the lions roaring. And I was like, "Oh my God, like this is Africa, you know? This is crazy." I think John and I both just looked at each other. We're like, "Man, this is crazy." But it was great. Our safari guide, he was an artist as well, which was cool because he does these beautiful like hand drawn portraits of these animals. And I bought this really cool photo of like a lion's face for my house that he drew, which is cool. But yeah, we had a game drive on both days, so saw lots of animals, and John and I we were kind of staying in the last hut to be dropped off for the evening. So we would kind of went around to each location and dropped off each guest at their location. And John and I were all the way at the end, so we got to do the whole drive back through the whole property at night. And so we kind of got an extra like safari drive in there at nighttime, and the guide gave me the spotlight so I could kind of look around, and it was just crazy. Like as you drive and you shine this light in all different directions, and you just see little eyeballs like watching you from everywhere. Little ones, big ones, little things running around everywhere. It really came alive at night, and we were kind of lucky that we got the chance to do that extra little drive at night to get to our hut. We had an amazing dinner there. We ate some ostrich, which was like a very common thing there. I guess ostrich meat is very healthy for you. Is really delicious, and kind of became a theme on the trip. We were getting ostrich whenever we could, but yeah, it was great. Safari was incredible. We watched the elephants like bathing in the water and like almost kind of like fighting with each other at one point. There was a few moments where like these massive elephants like walked right past the truck, and you can just feel the power of these animals, and like it's pretty insane. It felt like Jurassic Park, like you're amongst these massive dinosaurs, and like this lion was walking through this prairie and like just walked right past the truck, and a couple feet away from the truck you just see this lion like walking, and there's no protection between you and that lion. Like you're just on this truck trusting that hopefully it won't come up and get you. But pretty crazy feeling to just be next to these massive dangerous animals like that, and it was a really cool experience. This was definitely like what I came here for, and it was everything that Wes promised it would be. This adventure has been like so amazing, and it was like a perfect blend of riding and adventure and adversity, but also some time to relax and unwind, go on a safari and see South Africa in the really cool ways that you would want to see it. And Wes just put together like an absolutely perfect trip. It would take us 2 long, full days just riding on the highway to get back to Cape Town, because we just took the more direct way back. But it was actually nice because we had so much off-road time. I think we were all kind of worn down, and all of our bikes were broken, and everyone at that point had dropped their bikes at least once or twice. So I think we were all happy to be on the pavement, and it was nice to have that time in the helmet to just kind of process the trip and take it in, and just think about everything we had experienced. And it's funny because like we came looking for this place called Hell. We found something else entirely. Exploring these places is really like the best part of riding motorcycles to me. I think these types of trips are things that you carry with you forever, and you can experience the type of silence in the middle of nowhere on your motorcycle, and you go far enough into that peace and solitude and silence that it kind of reveals who you are and what's important.
The road back is always different. Same miles. Back to where you started. but you're not the same person riding them. Something shifts out there quietly, and you don't notice it right away until you're alone with your thoughts and it all starts to settle in. We came here chasing something wild, something harsh, something unforgiving. But somewhere along the way, it became something else. Not a place to conquer, not a place to survive, just a place to feel alive. We didn't find hell, we found heaven.
I hope you guys like these little adventure recaps. I've gone all around the world on like so many cool adventures, and I've told some of these stories in the magazine that we published, but I just feel like the podcast is a really cool way to revisit these experiences in a new way. And maybe you guys will find some entertainment listening to these experiences and adventures, and maybe not, but yeah, just something different to switch it up occasionally. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one. I've got a couple really amazing guests coming up in the next couple weeks, so stay tuned for some really exciting stuff from the podcast, and thanks for listening. I want to give a shout out to my amazing sponsor, Ryder Justice. There's a lot stacked against us as riders. The unpredictable things that can happen out on the road, and there's a general negative perception of motorcyclists in the courts when something unfortunate happens. Thankfully, there's someone out there who's been fighting for us, like really fighting for over 25 years, and that's Scott O'Sullivan of Ryder Justice. Scott is not just a lawyer, he's an advocate for riders. The kind who shows up to rallies, sits on nonprofit boards, gives free legal advice to riders in need, and truly fights for our rights. He launched Ryder Justice to stand up for all of us, on the road, in the courtroom, and in our culture. If you've been hurt in a crash, if you've lost someone, or if you just want to know your rights as a rider, go to ryderjustice.com.